Thank you. Please be seated. Good evening once more. I am Wendy Phipps, Minister with Responsibility for Health for St. Kitts and Nevis, and I have the pleasure of guiding you through this evening's important ceremony. The Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, the Honorable Eugene Hamilton, Minister of Health, National Insurance, Community Development, etc., other members of the Federal Cabinet and the Parliament, but with particular mention to the Leader of the Opposition, Dr. the Honorable Denzil Douglas, the Honorable Delmord Ryan, Deputy Premier and Minister of Health for Montserrat, the Honorable Evans Rogers, Minister of Health, Anguilla, the Honorable Marlwin Joseph, Minister of Health, Antigua and Barbuda, Ms. Diane De Rosa, National Epidemiologist for Bermuda, Dr. Samuel Williams Rodriguez, Medical Officer of Health and Acting Chief Medical Officer for the Cayman Islands, representatives of the Ministries of Health for St. Kitts and Nevis, Bermuda, and the Cayman Islands, Dr. Sir Kennedy Alphonse Simmons, National Hero, St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Carissa Etienne, Director of the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, and representative of the World Health Organization for the Americas, Dr. Cesar Nunez, Director, Regional Support Team for Latin America and the Caribbean at UNAIDS, Ms. Ada Oliver, Deputy Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean for UNICEF, Mr. Derek Springer, Director of PANCAP, Dr. Edward Green, Advisor to UNAIDS and PANCAP, Dr. Mercelin Dahl-Regis, Chair of the Regional Validation Committee for PAHO and Chair of the Global Validation Advisory Committee for the WHO, Dr. Godfrey Shreb, PAHO WHO Representative for Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean countries, Dr. Noreen Jack, PAHO WHO Representative for Jamaica, Bermuda, and the Cayman Islands, Dr. Jessie Choutene, Sub-Regional Program Coordination for the Caribbean, Mrs. Maria Brown, Representative of the Spouses of Caribbean Leaders Action Network, Antigua and Barbuda, Chief Medical Officers and Senior Government Officials, representatives of other regional and international organizations, representatives of the private health sector, representatives of civil society, other invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor and pleasure and privilege to welcome you to this important ceremony, which happens to be the Caribbean Validation Ceremony for the elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis. This evening, we recognize this lofty milestone that has been attained by the following countries: Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Bermuda, Montserrat, the Cayman Islands, and our home country here, St. Kitts and Nevis. To say that this is a remarkable achievement will almost be an understatement. It is a journey that has been hard fought and long in coming. Points that would have been raised quite eloquently just this morning as we celebrated World AIDS Day in a similar ceremony right here in this very room. However, it is not my job to belabor the points or to steal the thunder of any of our speakers who are well able this evening and are on the agenda to present to you their own thoughts, their own objectives, and their own desires for our region's health and future as it relates to the control of HIV/AIDS and the eventual eradication of that scourge from our people in the region and for the rest of the world for that matter. As we start this evening's proceedings, I now ask for your attention to a special video that has been prepared by PAHO relating to the elimination of mother-to-child transmission in the countries that are being recognized this evening, as well as the programming that may have contributed in large and small measure to the attainment of this feat. I crave your indulgence at this point.
As the CARICOM lead spokesman on matters to do with health, I am pleased to report that the Caribbean is leading the world with the elimination of the mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis. This is, of course, a result of the strong political commitments to public health and making the health of mothers, children, and families a regional priority. Over the last 6 years, we have been able to reduce new HIV infections in children by more than half. This is an amazing achievement, given the high rates of HIV in the past. And this success story we intend to improve upon even more in the future.
The key achievement I can speak about from my island, Barbados, was our program. Our National HIV Commission and the Ministry of Health and the program that was in place of the testing of women that were pregnant, the constantly education within the community. Civil society play a key role within any program, any policy that a country have to put out there.
The coordination and the link between the public sector and the private sector is actually very strong, because at some point in time, during the antenatal course and also at the end when they're ready for delivery, they come into the public system. So there's literally 100% capture.
We ensure that we have decentralized services, not just only in the public health system, but it's also free services are available in the private health system. If you want to have HIV testing, if you are diagnosed, you get free care and treatment, even if you go into the private system, and that's provided by the Ministry of Health.
We have to continue to make sure our staff, especially the new ones, and even the old ones, we have to reinforce the policies and procedures that we have.
What we have been doing, throughout the years is trying to institutionalize these procedures to ensure that it doesn't matter who comes into the system, that they're doing the same thing all the time.
We started with an opt-out system where we kind of bundle it in with all the antenatal testing, right? So syphilis, HIV, everything was bundled in with the regular antenatal screening. And most women did not opt out.
As a matter of fact, let me tell you this. I go out and look for them. Okay? I go and look for them just so that they can start early prenatal registration and care. And in the event of any, I do educate them as to the possibilities of problems during pregnancy.
So we have seen a change in behavior over the years, and we have ensured that we support that with comprehensive sexual and reproductive health policy. We have ensured that we provide family planning and cater to their human rights, that it is okay, you can reproduce if you want to, even if you're HIV positive.
I have a son and a daughter. My son is 7 years and my daughter, she's soon to be 1 year old. She's wonderful. She is the typical year old. She does things that just really give me reasons to go on.
We have trained community leaders to conduct rapid testing. So we ensure that everybody can have availability and access to early detection.
One of the most important things would be to make sure that the public is educated and understands the importance of testing, why we're testing, and why we need to know their status and, to be able to prevent transmission.
I think it has worked significantly well within the antenatal population because the message is really about saving the baby's life, about doing everything in our power to ensure that that infant isn't going to contract the virus.
Il sortait même dit prends médicament fait tant que c'est sucre ou fait ou prend médicament pour sucre supposé boire chaque jour. Et en après on fait test pour lui normal mais j'étais toujours quand un petit cotrine pour lui mais on fait deuxième test encore donc on côté tout normal.
Generally in Grand Cayman, both for pregnant women and non-pregnant women and male partners, there doesn't seem to be any stigma in regards to getting a test done. Actually seems to be quite relatively open.
When you go to the clinics and the hospitals, it's not like, oh, you're HIV, you sit on that side and this one sit on that side. Nobody knows. When the nurses speak to you, nobody knows what they're saying. They always speak to you and it's always a private conversation. And I generally feel, very free and feel very comfortable.
I would like to congratulate the governments of these countries that are following the example that Cuba set 2 years ago.
I'm so excited about our validation. The members of staff worked so hard to see this dream become a reality.
It's rewarding to know that after a long road, we finally get to the point that it can be officially validated that we have achieved elimination of multi-child transmission of HIV and syphilis. Now, it doesn't finish here. We have to maintain that.
This is important for the Caribbean because it says that to have arrived at this juncture that we have had to guarantee access to health services for pregnant women. It means that there is some advance in terms of human rights, access to medicines and treatment, and importantly, that we have been able to follow up these women for a period of time. So It means, one, it's a maturing of the systems, the health systems in the Caribbean. It's also the fact that persons infected with HIV feel more comfortable to go to health services and to seek treatment, and that the treatment and the care is available.
The hope is there that one day, and which one day soon 2020, that it will be.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed further in our program, I would like to acknowledge the other members of the head table who would not have been listed in the order of precedence that would have been read at the start of our program. And these individuals are Massimo Gidanelli, who is Chief of the HIV/AIDS unit within PAHO, on my immediate left. Yolanda Simon, Regional Advocate for Persons Living with HIV. And Mercelin Dahl-Regis, Regional Chair of the Validation Committee. Thank you. At this point, it is my pleasure to call to the podium Massimo Gidanelli to bring brief remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, Honorable Prime Minister, members of Cabinet, members of the Parliament, Health and Foreign Affairs Ministers, representatives of the Ministries of Health throughout the Caribbean, of UN agencies, technical partners, civil society organizations, representatives of the media, distinguished members of the head table, our PAHO director and fellow colleagues, very good evening to all of you. I'm really delighted and deeply honored to be participating in this ceremony, in today's ceremony, as we truly are celebrating extraordinary achievement and results. The elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis has been reached and maintained over the last few years, as documented through a very rigorous validation process in the 6 countries and territories that are being recognized today. And based upon this undeniable landmark achievement, I would like to reflect over one of the very many aspects that certainly have contributed and make this event so exceptional. Many more, I'm confident, will be mentioned during the discussion in this panel session. Now, as we all know, the elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV refers to a communicable disease, a viral infection that came to the attention of the public health community about 30 years ago. It had been quite silent for a number of years, but it really sprang up and quickly spread to a pandemic proportion. And we were really caught off guard by those events and by the rapidity by which HIV spread all over the continents. And we literally had to start building up our public health response from scratch. We knew very, very little about what was going on. But today, some 30 years later, we have accumulated so much knowledge, so much experience. We have translated good science into a range of interventions, and some of you may recall what Dr. Norinjek presented today in a slide, a very thick slide showing what our armamentarium of interventions for what we call combination prevention is all about today. So we do have a lot of weapons at our disposal to really respond to that formidable threat to humanity. And in a good way, I think we have corrected the trajectory of the epidemic. However, I would like to challenge all of you, because we still do not have, as of today, 2 of the most fundamental weapons that we need to respond to a communicable disease. We don't have a vaccine, and we know how elusive the development of a HIV vaccine has been, and we don't have a cure. So we are talking about a condition that we can prevent, we can treat, but we don't have the ultimate prevention tool, and we don't have the ultimate curative tools. We are getting there. We'll probably will, but for the time being, we do not have those. So the question is, how could we collectively get as far in our response as to eliminating a way of transmission of this very infection for which we are lacking those fundamental tools and technologies? The answer is quite complex, but I think it has much to do with constructing a vision. And I think that most of the public health vision seeds were actually planted in this very region of the Caribbean. And this morning, Dr. Etienne mentioned probably two of the key factors that created those fertile grounds. One is the long tradition of the Caribbean in eliminating communicable diseases, and the second is the firm establishment of a top priority in terms of protecting maternal and child health, including from HIV. On those fertile grounds, that vision was constructed and quickly translated in what we then knew as the Dual Elimination Initiative, which was brought to the attention of you, Ministers of Health. You all agreed and endorsed that commitment, and in 2010, the journey started. So I think strong and continued political commitment over the years has provided really the necessary support to functional and resilient health system, to integrate HIV services into mother-child health platforms. At the same time, motivated health workers have ensured the delivery and sometimes even the improvement of very complex and oftentimes challenging interventions. Community have been engaged from the very beginning, and guiding principles on human rights, gender, and equality have been complied with, and actually they have been improved through the implementation of this very initiative. Broad partnerships have come together, as usual, around brilliant and attractive ideas, and they have contributed to establish and maintain all these synergies and interaction that have made this success story possible. We have also generated so many lessons that can be useful to further advance in our response to the epidemic, and we have also generated positive impacts on stigma and discrimination, two factors that continue to affect and limit our collective ability to respond to the epidemic. If we look back in retrospect, all this appears, it all looks very obvious and simple, but I'm quite sure that you are all convinced that it was not simple, nor it didn't happen without major investment and major efforts. The 6 countries and territories that today receive the WHO validation certificate really deserve our strongest congratulations. At the same time, I would like to mention the other group of countries and territories that more than a year ago started together this collective action of validation. They are not yet ready, but we expect them to join the group in the very, very near future. So, a big battle against HIV has been won in the Caribbean. It has demonstrated that despite the very many challenges, our public health and rights-based response to the epidemic can be successful, and that together we can AIDS. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gidanelli, for those remarks, which in essence put into historical perspective the journey towards a cure and also the control of HIV/AIDS as far as we have been able over the past 30 years. And we take note in particular of all 2 other hurdles yet to be overcome, that of the finding of a cure and that of a vaccine. At this point, I would like to call to the podium to deliver her own brief remarks, Ada Oliver, Deputy Regional Director for UNICEF.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Honorable Prime Minister Timothy Harris, Distinguished Minister and Representative of Minister of Health, Representative of CARICOM Secretariat, Dr. Carissa Etienne, PAHO Director, Dr. Cesar Nunez, UNH Regional Director, Dr. Derek Springer, Executive Director of PANCAP, Dr. Edward Green, Special Advisors, dear colleagues of the table, member of civil society, academia, media, ladies and gentlemen. It is for my colleague, Ralph Meady, who has been working with you, and myself, a great honor to represent UNICEF in this important ceremony. As Dr. Etienne said this morning, I am also here not only as a UNICEF representative. I am here as a woman, as a mother, as a defender of the right of all children, who recognize this moment, a moment for celebration of life. The celebration of the life of 1,000 children that are and will be born free of HIV/AIDS and that will have a good start to life. On behalf of our Executive Director, Ms. Anthony Lake, and our Regional Director, Ms. Maria Cristina Perceval, I would like to convey UNICEF recognition for this remarkable achievement, which demonstrate the extraordinary commitment and leadership in responding with clear evidence to the global pandemic. After almost 3 decades of intensive collective effort in the Caribbean region, it is indeed an enormous victory. We have jointly succeeded. We now have validated proof that it is possible to realize the right of all children to be born free from HIV/AIDS. St. Kitts and Nevis, Anguilla, Bermuda, Cayman Islands, Montserrat, and Antigua and Barbuda have set an example that will inspire many other countries of the region and of the world on how we can move forward to ensure a healthier future for mothers and their children while contributing to end the HIV epidemic. Despite the challenge that we might have, as presented in the report this morning, we are sending today a very strong message that ending AIDS is possible and that the first action can be started as early as in the first decade of life by ensuring that all children are born free of HIV/AIDS. But let's take a moment to reflect. Some years ago, as some of the community leaders conveyed to us this morning, might have think that we could not make this possible. We have come, as Massimo had said, from a long, long way, a time where no cure existed for children, a time where adult treatment was broken down to be administered to children. Therefore, the success of these 6 countries in achieving the global targets in eliminating mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis belongs to everyone. All involved organizations, partners, communities. Our acknowledgement goes today to all different stakeholders that have come together to curb the vertical transmission of HIV/AIDS. Ministers, health and social workers, regional institutions as PANCAP, NGOs, civil society organizations, community leaders. The efforts made to scale up the prevention of mother-to-child transmission of HIV/AIDS services and your commitment to ensure all mothers living with HIV treatment are now bearing fruits. You have reached the mark to ensure no more babies are born with HIV/AIDS. This distinguished participant, colleagues, friends, is one of the greatest public health achievements of recent time. As we move forward, it is important that children continue to have equitable access to services that will allow them to thrive and shine in supportive family environments with their mothers alive and nurturing their well-being. To PAHO and UNA colleagues, our congratulations and recognition. This achievement that we are celebrating today is a model of what the UN can achieve when we are unified, when we bring our technical knowledge, expertise, and resources together. This should be continued for celebrating our successes. This experience set the path of how we need to continue working together with governments, institutions, civil society, faith-based organizations, private sector, academia, the media, communities and family, in great alliance to contribute to the achievement of the SDG goal of ending AIDS by 2030. But please, let's not forget that it is now critical that all countries maintain its elimination of mother transmission success. We have now the responsibility to ensure that these children remain free from HIV during the trajectory of their life, as adolescents, as young adults, and as grown-ups. We cannot be complacent and allow this gain to be lost later in life. We have made the promise of an AIDS-free generation, and our work needs to continue until we get there. We need to be alert and duplicate our effort to ensure all children are born free from HIV/AIDS, stay free from HIV/AIDS, and no one die from AIDS. There is still work to be done to cement today's success. Congratulations to all of you. Many thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Oliver, for your congratulatory remarks to the 6 validating countries. We pay particular attention to your sober mandate that having attained validation, we must work even harder to maintain that validation so that there will be no slippage in terms of the gains that we would have made. We also thank you for reminding us of the pivotal role of UNICEF as a defender of children's rights, especially the right to be born free of HIV. Cesar Nunes, Director of UNAIDS Regional Support Team for Latin America and the Caribbean, is now invited to address us briefly.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening to the Honorable Timothy Harris, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. It's a pleasure to be again at the head table this afternoon. And of course, I adopt the established protocol, saluting my dear friend Carissa Etienne and congratulating mutually on this occasion of the elimination. I believe that anybody who works in public health has to be happy in such an occasion. We're really celebrating something that doesn't happen so frequently. I today bring these greetings on behalf of UNAIDS Executive Director, Michel Sidibe. He is today in Canada for World AIDS Day ceremonies, but he's fully aware of these proceedings, just as he was following up and supporting UNAIDS' role within the Regional Validation Committee. With today's validation, Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Bermuda, the Cayman Islands, Montserrat, and St. Kitts and Nevis have achieved one of the greatest successes of the global AIDS response, an HIV-free start for its youngest citizens. We have to be proud of that. What a powerful message to the world, Prime Minister. It's really quite an achievement. This is a remarkable achievement for the people, the health sectors and governments of these islands. Following the success of Cuba in 2015, this is further evidence that the Caribbean can become the first region to eliminate the transmission of HIV and syphilis from mothers to babies. In 2016, there were fewer than 1,000 new infections among children in the region. The Caribbean can end pediatric AIDS. While this success is certainly about building strong health systems, nurtured by, of course, past and present Caribbean leaders, it is also about the collaboration necessary to secure universal health care coverage. Women living with HIV, their families, healthcare workers, and the organizations supporting their care have collaborated to make this possible. With their engagement, all HIV-positive mothers can be put on antiretroviral treatment for life, safeguarding their health as well as present and future pregnancies. There needs to be continued investment in training healthcare providers to deliver services that are grounded in human rights and that focus on quality, non-discriminatory care. The elimination of mother-to-child HIV transmission brings us closer to the end of AIDS, as agreed by UN member states in the 2030 Agenda. It is also a key objective of the global strategy for women's, children's, and adolescents' health. Simply put, no child should be born with HIV. We have the medicines, we have the know-how. What we sometimes lack are strategies to reach the most vulnerable. We have to keep that in mind. To achieve our goal, we must understand who is being left behind and why. We must reach women and their families with not only testing services and antiretroviral therapy, but also the counseling, preparation, and support that they need to start and stay on treatment. Women living with HIV should enjoy all human rights, including the right to life, health, and non-discrimination, the right to found a family, and the right to information, confidentiality, expression, privacy, association, participation, and adequate standard of living, and access to the benefits of scientific progress. To attain this, we must renew our commitment to equip and empower organizations for and by people living with HIV. I encourage all the countries that have achieved elimination to address the issues raised in the Validation Committee's recommendations. Certification is just a first step. You must maintain and even improve on these results for years to come, because you may also go back, and we don't want that. You may now become advocates and help mobilize your Caribbean community neighbors to repeat your feat. We must work together to address the stumbling blocks to validation by securing more timely lab testing services, meeting the diagnostic and treatment targets for syphilis, and generating more quality data. One of the most powerful testaments to our capacity to end AIDS epidemic is success in ensuring that children are not born with HIV. But the work does not end there. We have to shift the attitudes and prejudices that make it difficult for families affected by HIV to navigate their communities, schools, and workplaces. These children will grow up. They will need nutrition. They will need education. We must give all young people the education, empowerment, and access to services they need to remain HIV-free throughout their lives. And we have to continue the hard work of increasing and improving prevention and treatment services without leaving anyone behind. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Cesar Nunez. We really have you doing double duty today, but it was a pleasure nonetheless to hear you for the second time for the day. Thank you so much for your congratulatory remarks, and also for reminding us that in order for us to maintain the gains that we have achieved and to set our sights on even higher goals, there is an imperative for collaboration at all levels if we are to get where we are. We are also mindful of the fact that in all of this struggle over the past 30 years, as you have so carefully told us, that we need to regard health care for all as a fundamental human right that no one should be denied. Yolanda Simon, Regional Advocate for Persons Living with HIV, I now invite you to bring brief remarks.
Honorable Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Timothy Harris, who's out of the room, other members of the head table, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, the media, all protocols observed. My little talk this afternoon, the theme is yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So, today is indeed a day for much celebration as we see people living with HIV, in particular women living with HIV, reclaiming their lives. However, before we get to today, let's journey back to yesterday as we remember those who struggled, as there was a time when access to treatment and medication was still but a dream. Except for the accessibility of ACT, and for those of you who in those days, you'd remember ACT was the buzz drug of choice, which was not available in the smaller territories and only accessible in some of the larger territories. When medication finally came to the Caribbean, the challenge in the early days was the number of pills that one had to take. Where did these drugs come from? In the early days of the pandemic, the HIV drugs were made accessible to the community by individuals who traveled between London, New York, and Canada, and who came home with suitcases filled with HIV medicines. All medicines which had arrived, and also medicines had arrived in magazines under the facade of monthly subscriptions. When the drugs arrived, they were handed over, this is in Trinidad and Tobago in particular, to the doctors of the Medical Research Center in Port of Spain, Trinidad, to be administered to the community. While we did have support from the Food and Drug Division in the government, this practice was not legal, but was not entirely illegal either. It was a time of much uncertainty, much hopelessness than hope, and the ever-increasing anxiety as we watched, perhaps with despair, the number of our sisters and brothers and friends. Some of them you may remember: Godfrey Seeley, Solomon, Catherine Williams, Roger Christiani, just to name a few, succumb to the disease. But today, in this room, it is a day of celebration. Today, we have made great strides in confronting the pandemic, and in this regard, we have seen the establishment of the Pan-Caribbean Partnership Against HIV and AIDS, PANCAB. We have seen the mobilization of significant resources, human, financial, and technical, to combat AIDS, and most significantly, the inclusion of people living with HIV and the wider community of CSOs, FBOs, and CBOs in the HIV response at both the national and regional levels. The results of which have been strong prevention programs, service delivery, and linking people into care and treatment. Today, we celebrate the elimination of mother-to-child transmission and syphilis in the Eastern Caribbean territories, in 6 Eastern Caribbean territories, and for that, I think we need to give these territories a round of applause. Yesterday, for those who were there yesterday, perhaps between 30 to 40% of pregnant HIV women would have given birth to HIV-positive babies. Today, there is an opportunity for an AIDS-free generation. Not so long ago in Port of Spain, Trinidad again, the Cyril Ross Nursery was the only home for HIV children and babies. And in fact, babies and children as young as 2 years old were left orphaned and abandoned on the doorsteps to be cared by this institution. However, with the advent of treatment, a lot of the children have grown into adulthood and have now become productive members of the society. Tomorrow looks bright. Indeed, tomorrow holds much promise. For tomorrow takes us closer to the possibility of ending AIDS by 2030 within the current strategy of 1990. Tomorrow looks bright, yes. Yes, it does. But in order for this to become a reality, again, we all of us in the spaces we occupy, must be focused on mitigating the risk factors. A few years ago, I stood in perhaps this very room in this hotel, and I remember saying, I am a champion for change. Perhaps on reflection, what I was really saying was change begins with me. So with support, I took responsibility for my HIV. I owned it, and I made a conscious decision that HIV would not define who I am. To this end, I cannot consciously recall one incident where I felt I was discriminated against. To be clear, I am absolutely certain that I have been discriminated against. But here's the thing, that is their problem, those who did the discrimination. The fact that in my psyche, I can't recall one incident suggests that I am managing my mitigation quite well. To continue on the issue of stigma and discrimination, though, still today, we have no systems in place to adequately address and reduce its negative impact. We have also not addressed the culture and sexual behaviors of our Caribbean people. There continues to be high levels of incest, high levels of gender-based violence, intimate partner violence between men and women, men and men, and women and women. Yet the conversation revolves around heteronormative ideologies, albeit giving lip service in acknowledgement to gender diversity. So, we have made progress in elimination for future generation. But what is our responsibility to the current generation? Is pharma the solution? This idea of elimination is heartening, but we have walked away from our prevention efforts. In most territories, with the exception of World AIDS Day activities, programs are virtually non-existent. We continue to not prepare our young people for their sexual lives. We operate on moral grounds. But what is our ethical responsibility for our own behaviors? For our own behavior change, and for those who are on medication, a greater understanding of the value of adherence and the potential positive impact at the community level. Vigilance is important. Risk management, restoring country programs, preparing our young people are important steps as stigma continues to be a problem. But today, we celebrate. We celebrate all the governments and all the technocrats and all the people involved for this victory as we move forward. However, we want them to encourage other governments that there are benefits here, especially the larger territories, to strive towards elimination of mother-to-child transmission initiative in their territories as well. Yesterday, over 25 years ago, I was handed a diagnosis of HIV at a time when there was no access to medication, very little psychosocial support, and the slogan was, AIDS equals that. AIDS equals death. Today, I stand before you as an activist in this Caribbean par excellence. And more significantly, a graduate of the University of the West Indies in the Gustin campus with a degree in sociology. Tomorrow, come next October, I walk for my Master's of Science degree. I stand here not simply as a face or a voice, of a person living with HIV. I stand here not to evoke your sympathy, but rather I stand here as a living example of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. In conclusion, I am standing here to say this is possible. This is possible. I thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am sure that you will agree that the testimony embodied in the congratulatory remarks from Yolanda Simon would have been moving in terms of indicating to us that there is life after an HIV diagnosis, and she gave ample examples of how she demonstrated that life and the goals yet to be accomplished by her in her tomorrow, having told us before that about what it was like yesterday and reminding us about the significance of why we are here today. We thank you, Ms. Simon, for also pointing out to us the long journey that is still ahead of us as it relates to ending stigma and discrimination among persons living with HIV. Thank you once more. It is my pleasure to call now to the podium the individual who has helped tremendously with the validation, attainment of the 6 countries insofar as the elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis. And that individual is Mercelin Dahl-Regis, Chair of the Validation Committee.
Madam Moderator, Honorable Prime Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, particularly our distinguished healthcare workers, I see in the audience a good evening to you. It gives me great pleasure. I feel prideful in standing here this evening recognizing the good work that the countries have done, the accomplishment we have made as a sub-region, as a region, and in the world. We have done it. We knew we could do it. 7 Caribbean countries have achieved, of the 11 countries of the world, 7 are from the Caribbean. The process was rigorous, was it not? Heavy, you say. Rigorous. And you worked really hard. It was a stepwise process. It began at PAHO with a vision and a commitment to get it done. PAHO, the region of the Americas, has a lot of experience with elimination. Elimination of smallpox, leadway, polio, rubella, congenital rubella syndrome, measles, and now they're leading the world. The region of the Americas is the only region of the 7 regions, and I'm looking directly at our representatives, that have a fully functioning, established regional validation committee. The only region. It's comprised of experts from many disciplines, partners, UN agencies, and policymakers from the Caribbean. However, this elimination was unlike any other, Madam Director. Having led the measles elimination, there were many adjustments that had to be made to address the country context. These adjustments are now incorporated into the WHO guidelines for EMTC elimination that was launched today in Côte d'Ivoire, and we have our footprints all over it. We've done a good job, madam. We've done a good job, everybody. This was at the ICASO meeting. The validation tools that were used were developed in the region and field tested here and in other countries of the Americas. The 4 tools looked at program performance, lab performance, data and quality of data, and human rights. This morning, the Honorable Prime Minister said categorically, stated categorically, persistence matters. Dear sir, we agree with you. Facts matter, data matter. Quality data is most important, but perseverance conquers all. Our health workers persevered to no end, and we are here today because of their work. However, this pathway, as I said to you, was stepwise. The ministers of health from the region indicated to the director that they wanted their countries validated. They provided the evidence. It was reviewed. We fielded a regional validation team for most of the countries here, with the exception of Anguilla and Montserrat. We didn't need to do it. Your data was so easy to manage. And the teams that went out consisted of some region, but mainly external experts. And they had, at the end of the validation exercise, they had a true appreciation of what political will is, what it is to have competent, dedicated, committed leadership in our region at the government level. It is an experience we take for granted. It is not so in other territories. We have a lot to be thankful for, and I want to salute the commitment, the resourcing of the countries that have accomplished this validation. It wasn't easy, okay? And we learned from each country that was validated. We saw some of the best practices. They were so creative, we didn't even imagine some of the models of care. Antigua appointed a PMCT coordinator for the project. Unlike none other, sir, okay? We saw in St. Kitts and Nevis the development of, Valerie, I call it a lab relay system that works to get the data quickly. We saw in the Cayman the Human Rights Commission and the work that they did with the Gillick law that will benefit all of us. We are hoping that PANCAP and CARICOM embrace this law that lowers the consent for adolescents, because our Caribbean leaders need a cover. I tell you why. In my country, we took it all the way to Parliament, and the religious community opposed it. And we did not get it through after years of work trying to lower the age of consent from 18 to 16. I think, forgive me, but if we can get this as a regional correction, I think it would help all of us do the right thing. We really need to do it. The experiences we've had as an RVC, as I said, we learn from the countries. We've also had to, I wouldn't say do battle or combat, but we had to challenge some of the ways of managing at the Global Validation Advisory Group. The data, our populations are small, and the model of statistical analysis does not fit. But we were successful in convincing all our colleagues there to pool data and actually count the cases, because if you put it in the model, it services India, maybe Brazil, the Philippines, but it does not fit what we have, and we are grateful for the accommodation. We've also included a new return to the indicator in the GAM, the UNAIDS collection tool, to include antenatal visits. It was a true eye-opener for our experts to witness, experience that we have more than 95% antenatal coverage, and with testing of HIV and syphilis. They could not, you can imagine coming from a number of territories and countries, they just couldn't, it was unfathomable to them. So you've heard, and it is true, that your status that you've achieved today is not a permanent status. Every 2 years, you have to produce a biennial report that says that you have maintained you have maintained the status of elimination. And we are aware of the vulnerabilities, acutely aware of vulnerabilities to our infrastructure, but we have the confidence in our leadership and our ability to come back. So we are not daunted by any of the recent events, recognizing that you will maintain your elimination initiative. We will overcome. You have a strong health system, and we have succeeded in establishing a solid rock maternal and child health program in all of our territories. And it's upon that rock that we build, and we achieve what we do. I want to speak a little bit to my former colleagues as CMOs, because we must always be on guard. This morning, the director spoke of Health for All that was given birth in 1946. Yet, it was in 1948 that there was the Guatemala experiment with syphilis, where they injected soldiers, prisoners, mentally ill with syphilis. The man who did it, Dr. Cutler, he also participated in the Tuskegee Institute. In 2010, and some of you would remember who were there, we sat in the directing council and heard an apology to the government of Guatemala for that experiment. Ladies and gentlemen, we must be on guard. Why? In 2013, my personal experience, I was presented with a grant that had ethics approval that I disallowed because they were doing anonymous testing. So if you had HIV, you would be told that you had HIV if your test was positive. That cannot be. We must not allow it, okay? However, the granting agency said, I said, no, we're not doing this. I said, what about your institutional review committee? What about your ethics committee? By the time I got it, you know what was said? It's allowed if the country allows it. So we have to be vigilant. We have to establish and build on ethical principles. And I'm saying CARICOM has a role too in helping ministries of health build their ethical capacity, because more is going to come. And as we embrace resources that come into our area, we must be vigilant. So I say to the former Prime Minister, Dr. Denzel Douglas, to Dr. Green, Mr. Springer, Carl Brown in absentia, a heartfelt thank you for the good work that you did and the personal sacrifices that you made for the region and to get us to this point to help our countries. Let's give it up. It was a personal sacrifice. Barcelona, Geneva, South Africa. I was young, and I was there, and I watched them, and I learned a lot. Thank you. Dr. Perry Gomez, who is not here, has certainly made his contribution to the journey of AIDS, and we remember him today. The RVC, the Regional Validation Committee of PAHO, will now have more technical experts from the Caribbean region. And it is my wish that these Caribbean nationals who are experts will make their contribution on the world stage and have the opportunities I had. To the CMOs here, we began this long and winding road many years ago, and we've come to a bend in the road now. But you should feel happy and proud of what these countries have accomplished. And you should feel that you have given a voice to the unborn, that you have helped with the lives of mothers, fathers, families. You've done a good job. A special thank you to my government of the Bahamas. Successive governments have supported my work with PAHO, and to the PAHO family, I thank you for allowing me to work with you, and I now bid you farewell.
I would like to thank Mercelin Dal-Regis, the chair of the Regional Validation Committee, for taking us on the journey towards validation and for outlining to us the rigorous steps on the process towards elimination of mother-to-child transmission and, of course, the certification as having attained that goal for the 6 member countries. Ms. Dal-Regis, I can tell you that I do believe you when you state that it has been a rigorous process, because our own CMO, Hazel Laws, would complain to me month after month, week after week, about what it was taking and how grueling the task was, how fastidious things had to be, the collection of data, the analysis of data, but Minister, we have to get it done. And I just want to say thank you for all of the effort that went into getting that done. It was a lot of work behind the scenes. What Ms. Dal-Regis would have explained was just putting it in a nutshell format, but it was a lot of work. So to all of the medical professionals from all of the 6 validating countries, I say a hearty thank you. I also thank her for identifying and acknowledging the role that would have been played, the critical role that would have been played on by some of our region's health champions, some of whom she would have listed in her acknowledgement, who would have done their bit in terms of helping us to celebrate the success that we today enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to invite to the podium our Director of PAHO and WHO, Dr. Carissa Etienne.
Thank you, Minister Wendy Phipps, and Honorable Prime Minister of St. Christopher and Nevis. Protocol having been established, but permit me to greet very warmly the Ministers of Health of the 6 Caribbean islands that we are celebrating today. Really, it is with immense pleasure and pride that I stand here to record that the Caribbean, though small both in size and population, can once again be recognized as a global leader in public health and disease elimination. As you should recall, and as Merslin you heard from Dr. Dalregis, the Caribbean was the first sub-region in the world to eliminate the indigenous transmission of polio, measles, rubella, and congenital rubella syndrome in the fight against the vaccine-preventable diseases. This same sub-region is now leading the agenda on the elimination of the mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis, with Cuba having been the first country in the world to have been validated by the World Health Organization in 2015. Today, 6 islands, 4 Caribbean territories, Anguilla, Bermuda, the Cayman Islands, and Montserrat, and 2 PAHO WHO member states, namely Antigua and Barbuda, and our host country, the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis. They are being recognized for having achieved their EMCT validation by the World Health Organization earlier this year. I believe that this good news must resound from the Marriott Hotel in St. Kitts across every island in the Caribbean, in the rural communities, among the vulnerable groups. And that call, this good news, should enkindle new hope and new determination that we can. New determination that we can achieve the goal not only of the eliminating mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis, but of eliminating the transmission of HIV by 2030. If any sub-region can do it, this is the sub-region that can. The seeds for the dual elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis were planted approximately 9 years ago at an AIDS conference convened in Mexico City, and unified in their commitments to this goal, the chief medical officers of the Caribbean assumed leadership for this proposal, and together with regional partners, coordinated and collaborated with the then PAHO HIV Caribbean office to advance this groundbreaking initiative, which was quickly endorsed by all PAHO member states in the region of the Americas in 2010. And some of these chief medical officers are sitting with us this afternoon. The regional EMTCT strategy, which calls for and provides an opportunity for strengthening of health systems and services, stimulated the development of a global movement. Following the launch of the strategy in 2010, and with the unwavering commitment of member states to work towards dual elimination, PAHO, in collaboration with UNICEF, UNAIDS, CARPHA, the US CDC, PANCAP, and other regional partners, provided technical support to the ministries of health for the strengthening of primary prevention and treatment services for HIV and syphilis for pregnant women within the established and successful maternal prenatal, and child health services. Through coordinated collective actions, antiretroviral treatment was introduced for HIV-positive women after delivery. Between 2010 and 2016, the Caribbean witnessed a 64% increase in HIV-positive pregnant women who were receiving antiretroviral therapy and a 56% reduction in the number of new HIV infections among children 0 to 14 years. Although congenital syphilis cases have remained stable since 2010, these cases continue to be maintained below the elimination target of 50 cases per 100,000 live births. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are celebrating here this evening are truly remarkable achievements, and it has been said so by previous speakers. From a wider health system perspective, however, I would like to underscore that these are achievements that are underpinned by strong maternal and child health services. The British left us with good MCH services. But not only strong maternal and child health services, but a manner of organization of healthcare where prevention and treatment services for HIV and syphilis could be successfully integrated and implemented. That's one of the strengths of the Caribbean. These specific programs have resulted in the strengthening of the health services as a whole. We are also celebrating the results of the persistent and dedicated work of numerous public health nurses and other health professionals, both within the public and the private health sectors, who were pivotal to the process, as without them, validation would not have been possible in this relatively short time. You listen to Merslin, it is a rigorous process. While we celebrate, I must remind you all that validation is not an end in itself. Rather, it is just the beginning of a process as countries will need to maintain their elimination status. Countries that have been validated and those considering validation should maintain their quest to improve the quality of care, coupled with ongoing surveillance and a robust monitoring and evaluation system for HIV and syphilis within the framework of their maternal, perinatal, and child health services. I would like also to underscore that the further strengthening of other key elements, such as early diagnosis and treatment, coupled with universal access and coverage, quality care, strong and consistent partnerships between the public and the private health sector, as well as an efficient lab network involving both public and private laboratories are equally as important. The achievement of the dual elimination targets has additional positive implications for the region, as it helps countries to reach other sustainable development goals, such as the reduction of maternal and child mortality, universal access to sexual and reproductive health care services, and universal health coverage, while contributing to the reduction of inequalities. As we look to the future, we intend to further enhance and expand this initiative to eliminate mother-to-child transmission. We are going to go to EMTCT+, which will include hepatitis B and Chagas disease. This direction has already been outlined in the Plan of Action for the Prevention and Control of HIV and Sexually Transmitted Infections 2016-2021, which was approved by member states in 2016. While this plan will contribute to ending AIDS and other sexually transmitted infections as a public health problem in the Americas, it is also expected to further leverage the maternal and child health platform while maximizing efforts to eliminate other preventable communicable diseases. We must maintain the elimination agenda in the Americas led by the Caribbean sub-region. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen, the success that we celebrate today did not come overnight, but have resulted from the cumulative, progressive, and concerted efforts of many others. Consequently, I believe that it is fitting to recognize those pioneers who have labored in the Caribbean vineyard to lay the foundation for the work and successes in HIV/AIDS that we are reaping today. In this regard, we recognize the political commitment of the Caribbean community during those early years of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, including the diligent leadership of the Honorable Dr. Denzil Douglas in his former capacity as the CARICOM Health Lead, and Dr. Edward Green in his capacity then as Assistant Secretary General of CARICOM. We wish to acknowledge the extraordinary policy and technical contributions of persons like the late Dr. Barry Wint, who was the former Chief Medical Officer of Jamaica, who prepared the first Pan-Caribbean HIV/AIDS plan. We also would like to recognize the efforts of Dr. Peter Figueroa, who was the National Epidemiologist of Jamaica, the outstanding clinical work of Dr. Perry Gomez, a leading infectious disease specialist and former Minister of Health of the Bahamas, the extensive research contributions of Professor Sir Courtney Bartholomew of Trinidad and Tobago, the compelling advocacy work of Dr. Carol Jacobs of Barbados, and of Mrs. Yolanda Simon of CRN Plus at the time, and the work of Sir George Allen, the former director of PAHO, who is now the Director Emeritus of the Pan American Health Organization, for enabling widespread discussions and the strategic positioning of the topic of HIV/AIDS on numerous national, regional, and global agendas, and to all of the other persons who we have not mentioned here today, and who have gone before us, and importantly, on whose shoulders we now stand. Let's give them a hand. If we are not grateful for the heroes that went before us, we ourselves cannot wish to emulate them or to become heroes ourselves. So thank you. As I conclude, I would like to sincerely congratulate the governments of these countries and territories who are represented here by the Honorable Ministers of Health and other delegates as they receive their validation certificates. I also wish to highly commend the governments of the region for their political commitment and dedication in maintaining the EMTCT strategy on the national and regional agenda as they strive to end HIV and other STIs as public health problems. I must also convey my genuine thanks to all of the women and their partners who recognize the critical importance of these early interventions during pregnancy and took appropriate actions and, by extension, supported the regional prevention efforts. I would like to express my profound appreciation to all of the regional partners that have steadfastly supported and accompanied the process. And in this regard, I would like to thank UNICEF for co-chairing the EMTCT Secretariat with PAHO, UNAIDS and other UN partners for their continuous advocacy and support, and the U.S. Centers for Disease Prevention and Control for their ongoing technical expertise throughout the process. Finally, I also extend my deepest gratitude to the members of the Regional Validation Committee, who, under the indomitable and spirited leadership of Dr. Mercelin Dalregis, have made outstanding contributions to the validation process, not only in the Caribbean, but as you've heard, at the global level as well. My special thanks also go to the members of the Technical Working Group in the Caribbean for their ongoing guidance and support, to the Global Validation Committee members for their dedicated, committed, and sustained efforts in the process, and to the WHO Geneva team. Last, but certainly not least, I wish to thank and congratulate the staff of the PAHO Secretariat and all of those who have worked tirelessly towards the validation process. I say thank you. In closing, I wish to pledge PAHO's unstinting support to our member states as they continue to work assiduously to ensure a generation born free of HIV and congenital syphilis. I thank you, and let us move forward united. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, could we have another round of applause for Dr. Etienne? In typical fashion, she has understated to a great degree the critical role that PAHO played in this attainment that we celebrate here this evening. Because if it wasn't for PAHO, we would not have made it thus far, thus soon. I also acknowledge her positive comments in terms of the smallness of our sub-region not being seen as a detraction from the attainment that we celebrate here this evening, and for reminding us what a phenomenal attainment that we now celebrate, but at the same time, for soberly reminding us that we have to maintain the validation now that we have attained it, and that takes continuous effort. And as if that wasn't a challenge enough, she has now whetted the appetite by telling us about EMTCT, which is dealing with, hello? Plus, okay? Which is dealing with Hep B as well as Chagas disease. So we do have another journey ahead of us, but she has promised us that in spite of our smallness, we are going to make it. And that I do believe. I am also mindful of her comments that the strength of our primary health care infrastructure in St. Kitts and Nevis and the other 5 territories, and also our antenatal clinics and so forth, would have done a tremendous amount of work in helping to get us to this point in our journey. And I do subscribe to her comments, and also the fact that having attained this validation status now, it puts us further on the path of attainment of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that are still before us. This point in our program is dedicated to the presentation of certificates to the qualifying countries, but I am advised that there should be a slight change in terms of your program, in that whereas it says that there would be acceptance remarks after the presentation of certificates, we will be doing the 2 things together. By that I mean that as the ministers come forward with the various presenters, the ministers individually, right after presentation, would be given an opportunity to speak for a few minutes in acknowledgement of the certificates. So that being said, I now invite Dr. Etienne to stand down in front of the head table and be joined by the Honorable Eugene Hamilton, Minister of Health for St. Kitts and Nevis.
Thank you. All protocols observed. I accept this certificate on behalf of the Federation of St. Christopher and Nevis, acknowledging this significant achievement. I would also like to extend that significant achievement has been achieved because our healthcare workers have worked so assiduously over the many years. Let us give them a hand. And I take the opportunity to pledge, Mr. Prime Minister, that my country will observe all protocols so that we can achieve the elimination of HIV by 2030. I also want to also pledge that we will remove all gaps, bridge those gaps, so that our healthcare providers can deliver our HIV elimination. It is important for me to also mention that it is significant that we have done so well to eliminate HIV when a child is helpless, and then have that child contract HIV in his teens and 20s. Therefore, we have to remove all gaps, bridge those gaps to ensure that we do not contract HIV in your teens and 20s. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Hamilton. Our next presentation calls for the Honorable Evans Rogers, Minister of Anguilla, to step forward, along with Dr. Cesar Nunez, Director of UNAIDS.
A pleasant good evening to everyone. Please permit me to adopt the protocol already established and to say that I deem this an honor and a privilege to have accepted this certificate of validation on behalf of the people, the government and people of Anguilla, the Health Authority of Anguilla, and to pledge that while it has been difficult to attain this validation, that the maintenance of it and any improvements there is will be followed strictly. I also would like to take this opportunity to place on record my profound thanks and appreciation for the hardworking healthcare professionals in Anguilla. The type of work they did is commendable, and a small society, and of course, to thank PAHO and WHO for their support and continuing support in achieving this. I hope that the next ceremony, rather than having 6 countries named, that we will be able to say the Caribbean has been validated. I thank you all very much, because at the end of the day, we are one people, we are family, and we need the entire Caribbean to be validated in this effort and this fight. Thank you.
Can we have Dr. Samuel Williams Rodriguez, Medical Officer of Health and Acting CMO for the Cayman Islands, to step forward with Ada Oliver, Deputy Regional Director of UNICEF.
Good evening, all. I bring greetings from the Minister of Health in the Cayman Islands and the government as well. It is an absolute pleasure, and I'm so pleased to accept the validation of elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV and congenital syphilis certificate for the Cayman Islands. We have not had a case of mother-to-child transmission of HIV in the Cayman Islands since 2004. In addition, there had never been a documented case of mother-to-child transmission of congenital syphilis. I want to thank UNICEF, UNAIDS, PAHO, and WHO for the work you do in the region and globally on HIV and STIs, and for your work entirely working through this elimination process with us. The government of the Cayman Islands is indeed grateful to have been one of the 6 countries in the region selected for validation. The Cayman Islands remains steady
in its focus and is committed to the prevention of the mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis by strengthening testing for this disease, with antenatal clinic services and the provision of antiretroviral therapy to all persons living with HIV. We are appreciative of the technical assistance and support offered by the Pan American Health Organization for this initiative, and I would like to thank the Elimination Initiative Committee for their commitment to this report. I am confident that with the recommendation made by the Elimination Initiative Committee and the technical advice provided by PAHO, the elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis will be maintained in the Cayman Islands. Now, if you allow me a final personal note, was born, raised, and trained as a physician in Cuba. I have been living in the Cayman Islands for 21 years. So I'm extremely proud and happy that both Cuba and the Cayman Islands has an elimination. Thank you all.
Thank you. The Honorable Delmord Ryan, Deputy Premier of Montserrat and Minister of Health for that country, is asked to step forward, along with Dr. Edward Green.
Good evening, everyone, and good evening to the head table and our Honorable Prime Minister St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Timothy Harris, and good evening to all who are participating and listening via the World Wide Web and radio. Indeed, today is a day of celebration for our 6 territories who have achieved a significant milestone in our countries in the fight against HIV and AIDS. And is it with a profound sense of gratitude that I accept this certificate of validation in achieving the dual elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis on behalf of the government and people of Montserrat. This is significant for us, and indeed a celebration noteworthy of the contribution and dedication of our health workers in Montserrat. I want to at this time say my sincere thanks to those past and present who have been part of this exercise, in particularly Dr. Gopal, who have led the team, he's the focal point in Montserrat for HIV, and to our nurse sister Violet Brown, for public health nurses and team who have worked diligently in ensuring that the records have been kept, to our chief pharmacist, Mrs. Rona Greenaway, and to our past chief lab technician, Mr. Raymond Samuels, and present chief, Ms. Kimona Daniel. We say thank you to our epidemiologists, our past and present chief medical officers, to our past permanent secretary, Mr. Elijah Silcott, and to all the members of the team, in particularly the health promotion team, who advocated and continue to educate our population on HIV and AIDS. We say a special thank you to Angela Skerritt, who have worked diligently in ensuring that we are all knowledgeable and the systems are in place to allow us to achieve this goal today. Thanks again to the regional support of PAHO, WHO, PANCAP, CARICOM, and all the training opportunities provided to our health workers to ensuring that we get to zero. Congratulations to one and all. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to Antigua and Barbuda by asking the Honorable Malwin Joseph, Minister of Health for that country, to step forward and be joined by Mercelin Dalregis, Chair of the RCV.
Permit me to adopt the protocol already established, but I move to recognize the presence of the Honorable Prime Minister Timothy Harris and the Director of PAHO, Dr. Etienne, and of course, the Antigua and Barbuda First Lady, Mrs. Maria Brown, and my Chief Medical Officer. I stand here in humility. The fact is, when we as human beings engage in exercise that could do something as profound as preventing a child from being born with HIV, it's a remarkable achievement. These are the human stories that give justice to the efforts of healthcare workers. I accept this certification on behalf of all the healthcare workers. I'm only the minister, I'm a facilitator. And I would like to send a message clear that I understand that attaining a goal sometimes is not as difficult as maintaining that goal. And there is a great challenge to all of us to maintain this goal. I want to recognize, however, the phenomenal support of PAHO and the Director, Dr. Etienne. Permit me just to illustrate a short story. When Barbuda was decimated, we were contacted by PAHO and given the assurance that they would provide Antigua and Barbuda the assistance. I remember speaking with Dr. Shreb about the level of assistance they would provide Antigua. And we as healthcare workers had to intervene in what was the greatest threat of environmental health. Barbuda had about 4 inches of water all over Barbuda, perfect condition for breeding of mosquitoes and spreading of waterborne diseases. PAHO supported us. We had an epidemiologist on island in short order. And the epidemiologist established a system, and we had 2 cases of conjunctivitis that was in the shelter, one of our shelters. And it was through the surveillance system that was developed by PAHO. We were able to make the intervention immediately, and there was not a single additional case of conjunctivitis. I stand here today, and I can say to you, this audience, that there has not been a single case of mosquito virus spread on Barbuda, and not a single case of waterborne disease in Barbuda. Dr. Etienne, on behalf of the people of Antigua and Barbuda and the government of Antigua and Barbuda, I want to recognize your phenomenal support, and I know you'd accept it on behalf of PAHO. Thank you very much, and may God continue to strengthen our efforts.
For our final presentation of certificate, I now call to the front Ms. Diane De Rosa, National Epidemiologist of Bermuda, to be joined by First Lady of Antigua and Barbuda, Ms. Maria Brown.
Good evening. Protocol being established, it's a pleasure to be here on behalf of Bermuda's Minister of Health, the Honorable Kim Wilson, on this occasion. It's truly a remarkable achievement for our Ministry of Health team, including personnel from the Epidemiology and Surveillance Unit, the Communicable Disease Control Clinic, Maternal Health and Family Planning Program, and the Clinical Laboratory. This achievement would not have been possible without collaboration from public health partners, including personnel from Bermuda Hospitals Board's Quality and Risk Department, Health Information Management Services and Laboratory, private physicians' laboratories, and governmental and non-governmental organizations. Bermuda is grateful to the Pan American Health Organization, World Health Organization, Regional Validation Committee, and Global Validation Advisory Committee for their diligence in assessment and validation. Bermuda will now strive to maintain this achievement and further strengthen EMTCT surveillance and surveillance for other conditions of public health interest using the very rigorous EMTCT model which has been described previously. This will allow for improved collaboration in Bermuda with the private sector, different from many of our countries. Bermuda is very private sector driven. And enhanced data sharing through the integration of available electronic data sources as Bermuda moves towards the establishment of a comprehensive health information system. Bermuda is also committed to act to review and revise any current legislation and policies that may serve as a barrier to HIV testing and access to health services, and to have greater promotion and access to sexual and reproductive health information and services, especially among adolescents. Bermuda is pressing towards the goal of an HIV-free generation, and persons involved in HIV management continue to provide care, treatment, and related health services to the near 300 persons living with HIV in Bermuda. We remain committed to ensuring that treatment and services are sustainable for maintaining this validation. And in closing, we extend congratulations to all Caribbean countries and territories who have also achieved this validation. And it's no coincidence that this ceremony is on World AIDS Day, the day that the whole world takes notice of HIV and AIDS. In Bermuda, we've recently completed a documentary that looks back at the 30-plus years of HIV and AIDS in Bermuda. After all these years, it looks more and more likely that we are on our way to the goal of ending this public health epidemic by 2030 in Bermuda, and this EMTCT validation is evidence that we are on the right track. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, now that we have come to the end of the presentation of certificates and the acceptance remarks, I now ask for a collective round of applause for all validating territories. With these formalities over, it is now my pleasure to invite to the podium to deliver the keynote address for this evening's ceremony, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis and lead head for COSOD on health matters, HIV, and human development. Dr. Harris.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, Senator Wendy Phipps, the Ministry of Health of St. Kitts and Nevis. Madam Chair, I wish to crave your approval to adopt the protocol which has been set before me, save and except that I must recognize the presence of my cabinet colleague, the Honorable Eugene Hamilton, Minister of Health et al., and also to recognize the esteemed presence of our only surviving national hero in Dr. the Right Excellent and Right Honorable Sir Kennedy Alphonse Simmons. We thank you for coming to share with us. I want to especially welcome the ministers and high-level representatives from the region who have come out today, and to thank my colleague Gaston Brown for allowing his charming wife to be with us all day and hopefully all weekend in St. Kitts and Nevis. But I want to thank you. It has been a long day, but a very productive one for all of us who have been engaged in this exercise. This morning for me was very insightful and very instructive, And I particularly want to pay tribute to those persons who spoke this morning, representing the voice of the people living in the lane with HIV and AIDS. These people who our societies at times refuse to accept and acknowledge, and at times rebuff their way of life. We heard them speaking for themselves, and each one did so eloquently and movingly, reminding us that they have a story to tell, reminding us that they will assert their right to be heard and their right, more importantly, to health care. And so I thank them and ask that we stand and applaud them for coming to St. Kitts and being brave enough to be among the people of the region who have voices and let their voices be heard. Monique MacDonald, could you stand and could we again give her a round of applause? We had Ainsley Reid. Ainsley, could you stand? And we had Alexis D. Monaco. All of them had riveting stories, and all of them made us proud. And as they spoke this morning, and I contemplate what new messages they have brought to the table, how they have helped to anchor almost the justice in the approach of health professionals everywhere, I want us all to stand and give a round of applause to all the healthcare deliverers everywhere in the region, to say thank you to them for their work. Thank you very much. Very often we hear in speeches about the need for political will. And sometimes those of us who wear political hats wonder if they ever lacked political will. I believe there must be a new conversation which speaks more to the empowerment of people. Instead, perhaps, of political will, what is needed as we address these difficult issues is people's will. The will of every individual, citizen and resident, to let their opinions known so that those who are involved in policy formulation and action can take them into account. Everywhere, whatever the political system has been, dictatorship or democracy, it had always been about people's will. People's will, not political will. People's will that enriches democracy. People's will that changes and overturns dictatorship. So we need to get our people on board rather than focus, important as it is, the political will. But I've found in many instances, and from the stories we have heard today, from the presentation and involvement of the political leadership, long ago until now, it appears to be that it has never been about political will. It has always been about the people's will. And so I thank those brave people who have pioneered when it was unpopular to be associated with HIV/AIDS, to have come forward to take it on as a profession and a vocation, so that today we can count our blessings. And for our children, we can certainly say their tomorrow can be better than ours is today. So again, to all you healthcare people, another round of applause. It is my profound pleasure to participate in this landmark celebration this evening. I do so on behalf of my colleague heads of CARICOM, whom I represent as their lead head for human resources health, and HIV/AIDS. I also wish to thank PAHO, WHO, and co-hosts UNICEF, UNAIDS, and PANCAP for choosing St. Kitts and Nevis for this significant event, and I offer my congratulations to Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Bermuda, Cayman Islands, and Montserrat, which along with my beautiful land of St. Kitts and Nevis are officially certified by WHO as having eliminated mother-to-child transmission of HIV and congenital syphilis. What an achievement and what great cause for celebration. Give all 6 countries a round of applause. I am sure that you will join me in expressing deepest appreciation to the management and staff of our various healthcare services, the professionals in the ministries of health and other social services, the community health practitioners, the national AIDS programs, the volunteers in the various civil society organizations, the support from our various development partners, especially PAHO and PEPFAR, UNICEF and UNAIDS, for their relentless advocacy with PANCAP. In other words, we are celebrating this achievement because of a combination of circumstances, collaboration, cooperation, commitments, and resolution to the goals of elimination. As the CARICOM lead head for human resources, health, and HIV, for me this celebration signals the acceleration of a process that should hasten action by other countries in the region. Recall that our resolve in the PANCAP Justice for All Roadmap of 2015, approved by COSOD, is for the Caribbean to be the first region in the world to achieve the elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV and congenital syphilis. How do we accelerate this process to include other countries, many of whom are in close range of the elimination targets? As we celebrate this Caribbean Elimination Day, we hope that it will inspire other countries to action. Our success so far gives a new lease on life and the future of our children, and the future of children of infected parents. To have prevented the transmission, we give them a new lease, albeit a fresh start in life, and we affirm in them and their parents that children are indeed a blessing and a gift from God. May we say of these children, as it written in the book of Matthew, from the lips of children and infants, you, Lord, have called forth your praise. Moving back strictly to the business of health, first of all, we must recognize the major public health importance of mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis, and the critical need for interventions to prevent, treat, and end preventable stillbirths. According to a recent report in the Lancet series, adverse outcomes can be prevented if a much higher proportion of pregnant women were screened through the point-of-care tests for HIV and syphilis that need only 1 drop of blood, cost less than $1, require no lab equipment, and provide a result in 15 minutes. In addition, dual point-of-care tests are available, and if indicated, are followed up with a single dose of penicillin. This is one of the most cost-effective health interventions available. I am pleased to confirm that our Ministry of Health, in collaboration with CAFA, has been conducting training of dual HIV and syphilis rapid testers. It is also noteworthy that the number of HIV rapid testing sites in the Federation has increased to 14. 10, I am advised, on St. Kitts, and 4 on Nevis. This is the embodiment of the refrain: test, treat, and defeat, required to end the AIDS epidemic by the target date of 2030. The second aspect of the accelerated approach for achieving elimination that is particularly pertinent to our region is access to continuous, reliable, on-time data. The WHO validation process requires a series of country-led accountability, analytic, programmatic, vigorous data reviews with 95% treatment coverage achieved in 2 successive years prior to validation. St. Kitts and Nevis was able to achieve the required impact and programmatic targets by strategically strengthening the national health system, in particular the maternal and child health services, sexual, reproductive health, and HIV services. These services were integrated to ensure early access to prenatal care, HIV and syphilis testing for both pregnant women and their partners through adequate laboratory support, along with treatment and follow-up for women who test positive and their babies. The Federation also demonstrated evidence of a functioning surveillance and monitoring system that captured data from the private and public sectors. We are pleased that PAHO WHO, in collaboration with UNAIDS, has established a mechanism to assist CARICOM countries to meet the benchmarks. I must admit, there is so much that still needs to be done in the surveillance of HIV and STIs, sexually transmitted, within existing national systems to ensure the sustainability of data to monitor the gains we are celebrating today. However, I believe that we must be inspired to move beyond data development and analysis to meet the validation requirements. The Global Burden of Disease study of 2016 provides a methodology that the Caribbean may wish to consider for estimating more deaths, disability-adjusted life years, including disease prevalence, incidence, and life expectancy. In this regard, our policymakers will be able to more accurately assess the burdens from communicable, neonatal, and nutritional diseases, as well as from non-communicable diseases and injuries. With this evidence-based information, they can take the necessary corrective action. This is essentially a call to action by our national and regional statistical support systems and to institutions like the UWI Health Economic Unit and CAFA. Credible information will enhance public awareness, be valuable resources for sexual education in our schools and out-of-school youths, workplaces, and communities, and provide source material for our media workers. We must recognize that this celebration is taking place at a time when many countries in our region, Dominica and Barbuda in particular, have been ravaged by Hurricanes Irma and Maria, with consequences for their health systems and setbacks for the progress toward achieving elimination specifically and economic generally for our region. It brings into sharp focus the devastating impact of climate change, which this region did not create and which we cannot stop. It underscores the invidious classification based on GDP alone that disqualifies all CARICOM countries except Haiti from concessional funds. Yet it provides us with the golden opportunity to strengthen the case for including vulnerability highlighted in the 2016 UNDP Human Development Report among the criteria for concessional support. This is more so the case with the current shared experience by the British, the French, and Dutch territories, and the call for a Marshall Plan for the Caribbean that goes beyond the 2016 Paris Agreement on climate change. The European Union's pledge of US $352 million out of an estimated US $1.4 billion resulting from a joint CARICOM UN pledging conference on November 21st is a signal that some members of the global community are listening. From the devastation and rubble, our leaders have pledged to rebuild Dominica and Barbuda, and indeed our region, better and in more climate-resilient ways. Let this celebration stimulate a sense of purpose. Let us recognize that the elimination targets achieved by 6 countries form part of a wider set of benchmarks, of which integrated health, universal health access, sustainable financing, and the elimination of AIDS-related stigma and discrimination are all complementary components. The achievements we celebrate are testament to a key factor, the integration of maternal and child health with sexual, reproductive health, and HIV services. Integration underpins the new health sector strategies on HIV and sexually transmitted infections, and is fundamental to the attainment of universal health coverage and the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals. Finally, I assure you that you can count on my support and that of my fellow CARICOM heads for your endeavors to make the Caribbean the first region in the world to achieve the elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV and congenital syphilis. Congratulations again to all those island states that are and were certified this evening. Let us not get weary in doing good. I thank you, and may God bless us.
Prime Minister Harris, I thank you sincerely for your comprehensive presentation on the way forward as it relates to our territories after having attained the elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV and syphilis. Of particular note, we take on board your mention of the pivotal role being played by our healthcare workers every day, diligently, rain or shine, without which we could not have gotten to this point. We also take on board the public health imperatives you so ably noted in terms of eliminating, or accelerating rather, the elimination of HIV by 2030. We also pay attention to the importance of data gathering and analysis, a key factor which the validation exercise saw to it was completed by each of the 6 countries. We also take on board your comments with regards to the building of climate resilience and including the vulnerability of our small states within the development equation. And when one takes into account the brief statement of acceptance by the Honorable Malwin Joseph, we're reminded of just how critical that is in small states like ours with limited resources, but having to make dedicated and hard and concerted decisions with regards to limited financial outlays in small, confined economies such as ours, especially in the face of providing the type of quality health care that all our people deserve at the same time. We also thank you, Prime Minister, for the imperatives you have set out for us in terms of moving forward insofar as universal health care access and coverage, and setting wider benchmarks in terms of getting the integrated health approaches that we want to put into practice, and also sustainable healthcare financing. And least, but not by no means least, and last, we focus just on some of the stories that we have been told today, those persons having been identified by you earlier in your presentation and who would have had an opportunity to speak at this morning's ceremony, insofar as the elimination of stigma and discrimination are concerned. So once again, thank you for that all-encompassing presentation. I am advised that I need to make one more adjustment to the agenda before we close formally this evening, before I call Mr. Derek Springer. I now call Dr. Etienne forward and ask her to be joined by Mercelin Dalregis, Chair of the Regional Validation Committee. There is a special presentation that Dr. Etienne would like to make. Thank you so much. I would now invite Mr. Derek Springer, Director of PANCAP, to deliver the closing remarks to this evening's ceremony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honorable Prime Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I took a decision not to read a speech, but to put my heart into my mouth, to really express exactly how I feel, and to say that this is a very proud moment for the partnership, the Pan-Caribbean Partnership Against HIV and AIDS, of which we are all members. As we listened to Yolanda, Simon took us back on that journey, and she shared with us those very long winter nights and days. But you know what? As usual, the Caribbean has found its invincible summer. And so today we are here to celebrate with our 6 countries elimination of mother-to-child transmission and syphilis. And we have done so because the Caribbean dreams big and we deliver big. Everyone has reminded us of the critical need to ensure that we maintain elimination. But as I listen to every one of the representatives from the countries in their response, truly are proud of that achievement. And I have no doubt that they will maintain elimination. I want to thank the healthcare providers who work tirelessly. And Delcora, you don't have to come to Guyana and give me a little lash. Because when Delcora informed me that she had submitted the report for validation, we sent out a congratulatory message, and she panicked. And she said, what if we don't achieve it? I'm going to be embarrassed. And I said, I have no doubt that you will achieve it. But we have to recognize that our countries that really delivered here today could not have done it without the unwavering support of the Pan American Health Organization, UNICEF, UNAIDS, and our other partners. And I really want to acknowledge the contribution of our technical personnel in the region like Mercedes Dalridges. They have mentored us well. They have supported us. And therefore, we have been given the tools. And as such, as I make my clarion call here this evening to the other countries, that together we can, and you too can achieve validation. I want to quickly respond to Dr. Dalridges and to assure her that through our Justice for All program, that we are working with our faith leaders, and for the first time, we are bringing them together with key population groups in February, and then again with youth in April and parliamentarians, so that they can engage in respective dialogue with the hope that we can together address those barriers that impede young people's access, as well as persons who are vulnerable to the disease access to services. We have heard about the critical importance of data and reporting and analysis. And while CARFA is not present here today, we have to acknowledge the support that through the partnership that CARFA is providing to countries to help them to be able to be in a better position to report, and critically, to be able to analyze the information. I mentioned Yolanda Simon, and as I end, and we look here moving toward a generation free of HIV and syphilis in the Caribbean, I have no doubt that we will achieve that. And as Yolanda said, it is possible. I thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our validation ceremony. And at this point, I turn you over into the hands of the photographers who are eagerly awaiting their turn to line you up and capture for posterity today's significant event. I also wish to remind you that after leaving here, we have been invited to a cocktail reception being hosted by His Excellency, the Governor General, Sir Tapley Seaton, QC, CVO, GCMG, at Government House. Have a pleasant evening.